Hey guys, what's up? It's Calysta. This video is going to be about finding the right kingdom for you. So this is a question that comes up a lot. Sometimes I get asked if my kingdom is the right kingdom for somebody. So I wanted to make a quick video, and I'm going to break this out into two pieces. So the first one, I'm going to talk about finding the right kingdom when you're just thinking about yourself, or maybe it's you and a couple of more people, but you're not thinking of migrating with a guild, right? So you're basically a solo player that's thinking about a change of scenery. Either you're able to have enough might where you feel comfortable migrating to another kingdom and you're trying to just find something new. Maybe you're looking for a new guild. There's a ton of reasons, right, why you would want to do this. Now, when I was fairly new to the game, I think once my kingdom was unprotected, I wanted to check out what was out there, and I ended up jumping around to a few kingdoms and was able to really find kind of like best practices, right, just by trial and error in terms of what types of things I should watch out for. Now, the clear-cut answer to this is there isn't one, right? It's going to depend on where you are in your journey. If you're looking for a guild that is very stable, where and these are things that really happen, where the wonder is basically rotated, right, across a variety of different guilds, because let's say you're saving up for T4, right, where you know you don't want to be constantly fighting because it's going to make that journey harder. That might be one situation. If you just unlock T4 and you have a couple of solid marches and you're just looking to kill stuff, you don't want to fall into a situation like that, right? You're going to want to fight for wonder, you're going to want to fill rallies, you're going to want to fight for base and really get the most enjoyment out of the game that way, right? So there's going to be a couple of things that you're going to look out for. Now, the very first thing, obviously, is going to be going to world map, right? And this is the view, especially for you newer players, particularly for you newer players. This is really where you can see kind of what's out there and what's available. Now, the way that this is designed is obviously the older kingdoms have been around a lot longer. However, because there is so much migration happening back and forth, it by no means does that mean that the players are stronger in Kingdom 1, for example, right? Like, guilds, especially the big mighty guilds, will migrate across different kingdoms all the time. And we'll talk about guild migration in a bit. But let's assume that you are a solo player and you're trying to figure out kind of where to go. My first suggestion is always to take a look at the ruling guild. And you're going to learn a lot from taking a look at how people are titled. So I am randomly going to pick a kingdom. So I'm going to land in Kingdom 91. Shout out to Kingdom 91. If I have any viewers there, hello. So you're going to click on the wonder, right? You're going to go to base information. You're going to go to vassal titles. Now, this is going to give you an idea of who is holding the base. Now, the reason that this is important is typically the ones holding the base will be the mightiest guild, assuming they're not doing a rotation, right? So you would kind of click through, take a look at the alliance, and this is important for me, especially as I was kind of jumping around a lot. I realized that I wanted to have a fair shot of getting base, right? Like, I wanted to be in a position where I wasn't automatically jumping to really, really old kingdoms when I was newly unprotected, right? Like, I went to like maybe the kingdom before mine, and I wanted to make sure that for me, the English-speaking guilds had a decent chance of fighting for base, right? So we can see GNK, it is a Chinese guild. We can take a look at their family, CN, HAH, and ROF. Now, if we go down, we can see that for the most part, everybody that is titled is within their own guild. And when we take a look at who they're fighting, we can see that apparently VAV is not friends of theirs, right? And VAV is an international guild. They have 3.2 billion might. Let's take a look. Now, it looks like there's quite a bit of Vietnamese here, right? Like, if you take a look closer to the bottom, but it does say all languages. If we put the might ranking, we can see the strongest person is 112 million might. But if we go back to G and K, let's take a look at what their might was, 20 billion, right? That is a huge disparity. And if we look at the might ranking, we know that they have billion might players. So they don't like that other guild, but that other guild does not have a chance against these guys, right? Like, obviously, they probably just don't like them because they're annoyed at them for some reason. Another thing that I would do is take a look around the base. So the mightiest guilds tend to always park around the base for whatever reason, right? It's closer, it's easier. So you're taking a look at like big hives around the base are going to give you a good idea of kind of like who are the power holders here, right? So CN8 apparently is a big one. You can see kind of where they sit. Then kind of going around the base really quickly, you can take a look at any other kind of big guilds, right, that could potentially be contesting for base, any potential alliances, any potential, this is CN9, so probably some sort of family guilds to CN8, and we're going to keep scrolling around. So you can take a look, like just looking at this, right, you can tell that this is going to be probably a kingdom with some really big might disparities. Like it does not look like there is a strong second contender for base in this kingdom, just looking at this, right? Because if there was, they would be titled, like they would be actively fighting, right? They wouldn't necessarily say, oh, we're not going to give the guys that are fighting with us negative titles. Like, of course you're going to give them negative titles, right? And just by looking at that, you can kind of see there's probably not any fighting for that base from anybody but those guilds, right? So this, for me, if I were looking at this wouldn't necessarily be a place that I would go. And again, I'm making assumptions here. I actually don't know anything about this kingdom, but when you're looking to migrate, you don't know anything about the kingdom either. And that's the thing, right? Like you cannot go in and figure out who the top mites are, right? Until you try to migrate yourself and you realize how much it's going to cost you. And that kind of leads me to the second piece, which is, let's say you're migrating with a guild, right? Now, if you're a bigger player and you want to migrate alone and you have an alt account, send an alt, right? Or find a friend that's in the kingdom and can give you a screenshot of like who the mightiest guilds are and who the mightiest players are, right? For you alliances that are thinking about migrating, and this is more for the R5s and the R4s, always send a scout first, right? I would say there's a couple of things that you have to do if you're thinking about moving to a kingdom. In addition to doing the exercise that I just did, which is figuring out where the fighting is, like who is holding the base, who is fighting for the base, right? And you can kind of tell, or at least try to pull out a theory by looking at the things that I just showed you. You definitely need to send a scout, because now you're responsible for like 100 people migrating with you, right? And it's expensive and people are going to need to use migration scrolls. It's always good to send a scout. Make sure that that scout is not tagged with any tags of any alliance. Have them change their name if you have to. You don't want to give people a heads up that you're scouting their kingdom unless it's absolutely necessary. I have been part of really big guilds. This is just a general practice, right? You have an alt. It's also very cheap for an alt to be able to migrate, and you basically just send alt scouts, right, out into a variety of different kingdoms that you're basically assessing, and they're going to start taking screenshots. They're going to figure out who the mightiest guilds are, who the mightiest players are, what does world chat look like what is the real scene, right? It's awesome if they can be there for a base war so they can see what's happening, right? Like, are they fighting for base? Are they not? And those are all things that you're going to need to figure out. Now, once you do that and you have a solid understanding of how the kingdom works, I would also suggest diplomacy, right? So you want, especially for you guilds that are smaller, you don't want to land somewhere and become a farm. And that happens so often. I cannot tell you how often it happens. It is best if you can somehow pull it off, right? Like through diplomacy, by talking ahead of time. If you can somehow form a NAP, right? A non-aggression pact with the alliance that is like on your side, so to speak, and that is maybe holding base, right? Every now and then, like if there's another English speaking alliance, don't assume that they're going to automatically not hit you guys if you guys are also English speaking, or if you're kind of sharing a similar language. Like that none of that stuff really holds, especially amongst the English speaking guilds. Like if you want to have a nap, you need to talk to the R5 of that alliance and start having those conversations, right? Because remember, you are responsible for everybody migrating over, and you don't want to be a farm. And we have farmed people that have just kind of poured it in randomly. We had no idea they were coming, and they just immediately start getting attacked and farmed, right? So you want to make sure that you do that diplomacy. And if you can't get anywhere, maybe it's not worth going there, right? Because like you don't want to go from bad to worse, and that happens a lot. Now, if you are an aggressive guild, if you are a bigger guild, maybe you're a trap guild, maybe you're one of those, you know, billion and billion might guilds, you could also think about invading, right? So the scout piece obviously stands. If you're invading, you have to make sure that if you are thinking about invading, that you are not telling your entire alliance where you're thinking about going, right? That is going to be information that is going to stay at the R4, R5 level max. and people are notified the day of the invasion. Again, I have seen this completely screwed up. When we've tried to invade different kingdoms, information is not helpful or good. And you can't trust people to just have I don't want to call it intelligence, but you can't trust people to just use their common sense. Like if you're like, hey guys, we're thinking of invading Kingdom 135. All of a sudden, 3 people randomly go to Kingdom 135 and start burning stuff. And that's not going to help you, right? So you want to make sure you keep that information at the R4, R5 level until you're ready to pull the trigger. And you're basically going to say, hey, we will be unveiling the kingdom we are invading at 5 p.m. Eastern on whatever, Sunday. Make sure you're online. And that's kind of how you should deal with that, right? Because I cannot tell you the amount of invasions that I have seen get completely destroyed after weeks and weeks of planning because they let the cat out of the bag too soon. So hopefully this was helpful. I know I tried to kind of approach this from a variety of different angles, just depending if you're thinking about it from a solo player or as a guild. But as usual, thank you so much for watching.